She got pregnant by a stranger on a private island. Months later finds out he owned it. Mia Carter had never won anything in her life. Not a raffle, not a bet, not even a free coffee from one of those buy 10, get 1 free punch cards. Life had been a series of almost and not quites, close calls and closed doors. And now, she refreshed her email for the 3rd time that morning, even though she already knew what she'd see. Dear Miss Carter, thank you for your submission. Unfortunately, we have decided to move in a different direction. Mia let out a slow breath and leaned back in her chair. Another rejection, another dead end. She could already feel the dull, familiar ache creeping in, the one that came whenever she thought she was finally getting ahead, only to be reminded that success wasn't meant for people like her. Her phone buzzed against the wobbly wooden desk. A text notification flashed across the screen. Landlord, rent is due. Let me know if you need an extension. Mia groaned, running a hand through her hair. Rent, of course. She glanced at her half-empty coffee cup, the cheap instant kind that tasted more like burnt desperation than caffeine. She couldn't remember the last time she'd splurged on a real latte. The city was suffocating her, one unpaid bill at a time, and yet through it all she could still hear Nick's voice in her head. You always chase impossible dreams, Mia. Maybe if you just stopped trying to live in a fantasy, you'd actually be happy. Nick, the man who had once encouraged her dreams, only to mock them later. The man who had looked at her with admiration when they first met, because she was ambitious, passionate, filled with stories to tell. But that admiration turned to irritation when her career didn't take off as quickly as he expected. When late nights of writing meant she was too exhausted for dinner dates. When her unpaid internship turned into another unpaid gig, instead of a real job. The man who told her she was too much to handle before walking out of her life. The worst part, she believed him for a while. She let those words burrow under her skin, wrapping around her ambition like vines, choking it until she almost let go of her dreams altogether. That's why, when an email landed in her inbox, "Congratulations, you've won a luxury cruise to a private island," her first thought wasn't excitement. It was, this has to be a scam. She stared at the words, blinking rapidly. Then she checked the sender, the details, the fine print, twice, then again, and then once more for good measure. It was real. She had actually won a luxury cruise to a private island, completely free. Mia sat frozen in her chair, her brain short-circuiting. No one gave out things like this for free, not to people like her, which meant there had to be a catch, right? A hand suddenly snatched her phone away. Are you seriously thinking about turning this down? Mia barely had time to yelp before her best friend Lena waved the screen in front of her face like a winning lottery ticket. Mia hesitated, rubbing her temples. What if it's a scam? Lena scoffed. Girl, you checked 5 times. It's real. Mia bit her lip. Yeah, but what if I get there and they expect me to, I don't know, sell my kidney or something? Lena dramatically rolled her eyes. Mia, you're too paranoid. The only thing they expect you to do is show up and enjoy yourself. Mia folded her arms, still skeptical. Nothing good ever just happens to me. Lena sighed, sitting on the edge of the desk. Maybe that's because you never let it. You keep waiting for something to go wrong, instead of just letting yourself enjoy it when something actually goes right. Mia opened her mouth to argue, but maybe Lena was right. When was the last time she had done something just for herself? For as long as she could remember, she had been fighting. For work, for rent, for a break that never came. What if this was her break? A chance to step out of the constant struggle, even just for a little while. Mia exhaled slowly, staring at the email one more time. Then, with a racing heart, she whispered, okay, the email was real, the ticket was real, and now, so was the ship. Let us know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button for more videos. Mia stood at the pier, staring up at the massive multi-deck luxury liner that looked like something out of a billionaire's dream. She clutched the strap of her bag tightly, her heart thudding against her ribs. What am I doing here? Everything around her felt too extravagant, too polished, too unreal. Guests in designer outfits walked past, some wheeling glossy suitcases, others adjusting their sunglasses as if this was just another casual vacation. Meanwhile, Mia stood there in her thrifted sundress, gripping a suitcase that had survived one too many airports. Maybe this had been a mistake. Maybe she didn't belong here. But then, a burst of laughter filled the air. A band played lively music from the deck above, the melody mixing with the sounds of the ocean, and for the first time in forever, she felt a spark of excitement. For as long as she could remember, Mia had fantasized about escaping her monotonous reality, about experiencing the kind of adventure she wrote about in her travel articles, but could never afford. Yet, even as she stepped onto the grand ship, she reminded herself, this wasn't a fairy tale. The air buzzed with excitement, guests sipped cocktails, the sky burned with the colors of a golden sunset, and the ocean stretched endlessly into the horizon. For the first time in a long time, she felt like she belonged in a world where adventure wasn't just something she wrote about. It was something she could live. Mia had never been the kind of woman who believed in luck. She believed in hard work, late nights, and sacrifices. She had spent years chasing success, pouring every ounce of herself into her career, only to watch opportunities slip through her fingers time and time again. No shortcuts, no favors, just relentless ambition in a world that never seemed to give her a break. So when she won a free ticket to an exclusive cruise, a luxurious escape to a private island, it almost felt like the universe had finally decided to cut her some slack. For once she didn't have to fight for something, and maybe, just this once, she didn't have to question it either. This was her moment, a rare, unexpected gift from fate, one that she intended to take full advantage of. No love, no attachments, no distractions, just her, the ocean, and the freedom to dream bigger than ever before. Because this was the first time in years she was going to live, really truly live, and nothing, no one was going to get in her way. That night, the ship's grand ballroom shimmered under 1,000 golden lights, casting a dreamlike glow over the masquerade gala. The air buzzed with soft laughter, clinking glasses, and the swell of a live orchestra playing a haunting waltz. Mia stood near the edge of the room, fingers curled around the delicate stem of her champagne flute, feeling like an outsider peering into a world she wasn't meant to belong to. The midnight blue gown wasn't hers. It was borrowed from a woman she had met earlier that day, a socialite who had an entire closet of gowns, just in case. The delicate lace, the way the silk hugged her body, it all felt foreign, like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. Yet, as she watched the elegantly masked couples twirling across the dance floor, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. A spark, a whisper of something forbidden and exhilarating. She had no plans to dance, no plans to fall into the spell of the evening, until, would you care to join me? The deep, smooth voice sent a shiver down her spine. Mia turned, her heart skipping a beat, as she met the intense gaze of a tall, strikingly handsome man in a black suit and a silver mask. His presence was effortless, commanding but not overbearing, and his eyes held secrets. He extended a gloved hand toward her, the corners of his lips tilting in an invitation that felt dangerous and impossible to refuse. Her pulse hammered. She should say no, but instead, she found herself placing her hand in his, her fingers trembling slightly as he pulled her onto the floor. His touch was warm, steady, too steady. I don't do fairy tales, she reminded herself, but when the man pulled her into the dance, his grip secure yet gentle, his movements effortless, she had the sinking feeling. Neither did he. The orchestra swelled, the haunting notes of the violin sending a shiver through her bones as he led her through the steps. Mia was a decent dancer. She had attended a few weddings, fumbled through some lessons once, but this was something else entirely. He moved with a grace that felt instinctual, like he had spent years perfecting the way he commanded the floor, and his palm rested firmly against the small of her back, fingertips brushing her skin through the thin fabric of her gown. It should have felt too intimate, too much, but it didn't. It felt like a warning. As the music swayed, so did she, losing herself in the warmth of his arms, in the way his fingers lingered just a little too long against hers. It felt unreal, like something from a dream she never wanted to wake from. He leaned in slightly, his voice a quiet murmur against her ear. You move well. She let out a breathless laugh, tilting her head up to meet his gaze. I have a good partner. His lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. That's a dangerous thing to say, sweetheart. You barely know me. She studied him, the flickering candlelight reflecting in the sharp angles of his mask. That's the point of a masquerade, isn't it? Not knowing who's behind the mask. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, the touch so brief she almost thought she imagined it. Some masks hide more than just faces, Mia. She frowned slightly. How do you know my name? A teasing smirk. I heard someone say it earlier. It suits you. Her lips parted, but before she could respond, the music slowed. The waltz ended. He didn't let go. Neither did she. Who are you? The question hovered on her lips, unspoken. Instead she murmured, You dance like you've done this 1,000 times. Maybe I have. The night stretched on like a beautiful illusion. They walked together, past the ballroom, past the glittering chandeliers, until they stepped onto the ship's open deck. The ocean stretched before them, endless and dark, the moonlight painting silver trails on the waves. Mia leaned against the railing, inhaling the crisp scent of the sea. "So," she said softly, "do I get a name?" The man beside her chuckled, his voice rich and smooth. "Wouldn't that ruin the mystery?" She rolled her eyes. "You already know mine. It's only fair." He exhaled, tilting his head toward her, studying her as if deciding how much to reveal. "Call me a traveler." She arched a brow. "That's not a name. It's all you need to know tonight." His teasing smirk should have annoyed her, but instead she found herself smiling. "Fine, a traveler." For a moment silence stretched between them, the kind that wasn't uncomfortable, but charged. The kind where words weren't necessary, but everything was being said. And then he kissed her, soft, slow, as if sealing a promise neither of them fully understood, as if they had all the time in the world, as if they weren't just strangers in the night. Mia thought that would be the end of their fleeting encounter, but fate had other plans. The next morning, as she wandered through the ship's library, lost in a novel, she felt a familiar presence beside her. "I didn't take you for a book lover." She nearly dropped the book. Turning sharply, she found herself face to face with him. No mask this time. His sharp cheekbones, the strong cut of his jawline, the smirk that felt entirely too dangerous and inviting at the same time. Her stomach flipped. "And I didn't take you for someone who just travels." A chuckle. "Maybe we're both full of surprises." They spent the afternoon talking about books, about dreams, about places they longed to see. Every moment with him felt effortless, like they had known each other far longer than a single night. By the third day he had become her favorite part of the trip. He made her laugh in ways she hadn't in years. He spun her around the dance floor just for fun. He whispered things that made her heart race. And slowly, dangerously, Mia started to forget the one rule she had set for herself. No fairy tales, no falling. But the thing about fairy tales, they had a way of pulling you in, even when you knew they weren't real. Mia had always considered herself practical, a woman of ambition, not fleeting emotions. Yet here she was, laughing like she hadn't in years, spinning across the dance floor, losing herself in a connection she wasn't looking for. It felt reckless, irresponsible, dangerous. She wasn't supposed to feel this way. Not here, not now. But something about him, Elian, made her pulse race in a way she couldn't ignore. She knew she was slipping. It wasn't just the way Elian looked at her, like she was the only thing worth looking at. It wasn't just the way he touched her, like he already knew exactly where she fit in his arms. Maybe it was the way his deep voice sent shivers down her spine. Maybe it was the way his fingers brushed against hers just a little too long, as if testing her resolve. Maybe it was the mystery of him, the way he never spoke too much about himself, the way he avoided the crowds, slipping through the crews like a shadow, the way he never let anyone else get too close. And yet, he always found her. No matter where she was, by the infinity pool, staring at the endless horizon, on the observation deck, letting the wind tangle through her hair, walking alone through the dimly lit corridors of the ship, he was there, just for her, and every time she told herself to walk away, he whispered her name under the moonlight. He kissed her slow and soft, like he was making a silent promise. And Mia, she forgot why she ever learned to be careful. Then the day finally came. They reached the private island. The very place Mia had dreamt of visiting her entire life, and somehow, with Elian by her side, it felt even more surreal. She stood at the railing as the ship slowed, her breath catching in her throat. The island was breathtaking. White sand stretched for miles, so soft it looked like powdered sugar. Towering palm trees swayed lazily, the ocean breeze carrying the scent of salt, and something sweet, jasmine maybe. The water was impossibly clear, shimmering with shades of turquoise and sapphire. A place untouched by time. A place she had only ever seen in travel magazines and wild daydreams. Beautiful, isn't it? Elian's voice was smooth, low, brushing against her skin like the wind. Mia turned to him, but he wasn't looking at the island. He was looking at her, and something about the way he said it made her feel like he wasn't talking about the view at all. Her throat felt dry. "It's unreal." Elian smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. "Then let's make it real." He held out his hand, and against all logic, against every warning screaming in the back of her mind, she took it. The island was breathtaking. More than breathtaking, it was intoxicating. Turquoise waters kissed the golden sand, the waves lapping lazily at the shore like a lover reluctant to part. Towering palm trees swayed overhead, their fronds whispering secrets to the wind. The scent of salt and jasmine lingered in the air, a mixture of adventure and tranquility, as if the very island itself was alive, waiting for her to step deeper into its embrace. Mia had imagined this place 1,000 times before. She had written about islands like this, places untouched by time, hidden from the world, paradise wrapped in a dream, but nothing compared to the real thing. The warmth of the sun, the feeling of soft sand shifting beneath her feet, the way the sky stretched endlessly, a brilliant canvas of blue and gold. She could have stood there forever, letting the moment sink into her bones. But then, a hand slipped into hers. Elian, his fingers curled around hers, his grip firm, almost too tight. "You ready?" he asked, his voice low edged with something she couldn't quite place. She turned to him. The usual boyish grin played on his lips, effortless as always, but there was something else in his eyes, something that made her stomach twist. Mia swallowed, nodding, of course, and yet, something about the way he held her hand felt different today, tighter, like he was afraid to let go. Like he was holding on to something that wasn't meant to last. She brushed the thought away. Maybe she was overthinking it. Maybe it was just the gravity of the moment, standing on the edge of something new and exhilarating, about to step into an adventure she'd remember forever. After all, this was their moment. And Elian, he made sure she experienced every ounce of it. Elian made this trip unforgettable. He took her to places no one else seemed to know about. Places that felt untouched, hidden from the rest of the world, like they existed only for them. A secret cave, where sunlight streamed through the cracks, turning the water into liquid gold. The walls shimmered with reflected light, the waves whispering softly as they waded through the shallows. A hidden lagoon, so still and untouched, that the surface looked like glass, mirroring the sky above. They floated together in the silence, their fingers brushing beneath the water, his gaze locked on hers like she was something precious, irreplaceable. It felt surreal, like a love story she hadn't meant to write, like a dream she was afraid to wake from. And every night, under a sky full of stars, he pulled her close, closer than ever. The ocean stretched endlessly before them, the waves whispering secrets to the shore as they lay together on the sand. Mia let out a slow breath, tilting her head back to take in the vastness of it all. The stars burned brighter here, scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. It made her feel small and infinite all at once. "Don't forget this," Elian murmured, his voice a quiet echo in the night. Mia turned her head toward him, her heart fluttering at the softness in his expression. "How could I?" she whispered, resting her head against his shoulder. He hesitated, just for a second, then he pressed his lips to her forehead, a silent promise, a secret she didn't yet understand, but she would, soon. And by then, it would be too late. Mia had noticed it before, but she never questioned it. Elian never liked crowds. On the ship he would only meet her in places where there weren't many people. The quiet deck at night, the secluded corners of the ballroom, the shadowed corridors where no one lingered. Here on the island, he made sure she adventured, explored, lived, but always in places where no one else was watching. At first it had felt romantic, exclusive, like she was the only person in the world who mattered to him. But now she couldn't shake the feeling that it was something else entirely, like he was hiding. From what? From who? Mia frowned, glancing over at him as they walked along the edge of a hidden lagoon. Elian's posture was relaxed, his expression unreadable as he skimmed a stone across the still water. But there was a tightness in his grip, a flicker of tension in his jaw that hadn't been there before. And then, a sound, distant, muffled, voices. Elian's entire body tensed. It happened so fast, Mia barely noticed how he shifted subtly in front of her, how his eyes flickered toward the trees as if checking for an escape route. Then, just as quickly, he smiled. "Come on," he said, reaching for her hand. "Let's go somewhere better." Mia hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. The voices weren't close, probably just other tourists wandering the island. And yet, Elian was already leading her away, deeper into the trees, farther from the beach. She felt it then, that first, unmistakable prickle of unease. She could have stopped, could have asked him why, but instead, she shook off the thought. Not everything had to have a reason. Not everything was a secret. Sometimes things were just beautiful. The night before, everything had felt perfect. Elian had taken her to the highest point on the island, where the cliffs overlooked the ocean, endless and wild. The waves crashed below them, a steady rhythmic pulse against the rocks. Maya had leaned against him, her head on his shoulder, breathing in the moment. "This feels unreal," she murmured. Ilian let out a soft chuckle. "Maybe it is." She tilted her head up to look at him. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite place. "What?" she asked. A pause. Then he shook his head, smiling like nothing was wrong. "Nothing, just don't forget this." He kissed her harder than usual that night, like he was trying to memorize her, like he was pressing a secret into her lips. And for the first time in a long time, Mia let herself believe in something impossible, that this could last, that he was real, that she wasn't just another passing moment in his life. And then, he was gone. One moment, he was there, beside her, laughing, holding her hand, whispering things she knew she would never forget. And the next, he disappeared. Mia wasn't worried at first. Maybe he had gone to arrange something, a surprise. Maybe. But then, hours passed. The sun dipped below the horizon, spilling gold and crimson across the sky. The stars blinked awake, and the night breeze turned cooler, carrying the scent of salt and something hollow. Mia searched. She checked the small cabana he had been staying in. Empty. The bed, untouched. The floor, swept clean. It was as if he had never been there at all. A chill crawled up her spine. She walked down the shoreline, calling his name into the endless sea. No answer. The island was small, but it suddenly felt enormous. The laughter of other guests echoed from a distance, but it felt too far away, like another world she no longer belonged to. Where was he? Why had he left without saying anything? Mia's heart pounded harder with every step, with every unanswered whisper of his name. And then, a terrible sinking feeling settled in her chest. She knew, before she could even admit it to herself, before the truth had fully formed in her mind, she already knew. He was never coming back. By morning the fear had turned into desperation. Mia had barely slept. The sheets in her villa were cold, untouched, as if Ilian had never lain beside her, never whispered secrets against her skin, never existed at all. She had told herself, over and over, that there had to be a logical explanation. He wouldn't just leave without saying something, without telling her why, would he? She searched everywhere, through the twisting jungle paths, her sandals slipping against damp earth, down by the secluded lagoon, where their laughter had once echoed against the cliffs, past the empty cabana, where his things had vanished overnight, leaving no trace that he had ever been there. She stopped a staff member near the pool, gripping their arm a little too tightly. "Ilian Cross, have you seen him?" The woman blinked at her, polite but confused. "I'm sorry, miss." "Ilian," Mia repeated, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Tall, dark hair, green eyes. He's been with me this entire trip." The woman hesitated, glancing toward one of the other staff members before shaking her head. "I don't think I've seen anyone like that." Mia's stomach twisted. That wasn't possible. She tried again. Other staff, other guests. Each time the response was the same. Confusion, hesitation. As if they weren't just unaware of him, but as if he had never existed at all. She hurried toward the dock, heart hammering. The ship's crew. Someone must have seen him. A security officer listened patiently as she explained everything, where she and Ilian had stayed, where they had gone, how he had been with her every single day. Then he exchanged a glance with another officer. Mia hated that glance, the one people gave when they thought you were crazy. "Miss," the officer said carefully. "Are you sure?" Something inside her snapped. "Am I sure?" she repeated, her voice rising. "Are you actually asking me if I imagined him?" Her hands shook, rage bubbling beneath her skin. She had been with him. She had felt him, kissed him, memorized the way his voice sounded in the night. She had fallen asleep to the weight of his arms around her. Of course she was sure. But why? Why did it feel like she was the only one who remembered? The final day on the island arrived, but Ilian did not. Mia sat on the edge of the dock, staring at the waves, waiting. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, the gentle lapping of the waves mocking her silence. No footprints in the sand, no whisper of his name in the wind, no sign that he had ever been there at all. It had been days since he had vanished, since she had scoured the island, calling his name until her voice was raw, begging anyone to remember him. No one did. He had disappeared like a ghost in the wind, and now as the luxury ship prepared to sail home, reality pressed against her chest like a weight she couldn't shake. She had no choice but to leave without him. Her hands curled into fists at her sides as she stepped onto the ship, her body moving, but her heart frozen in place. She kept glancing over her shoulder, kept expecting to see him emerge from the crowd, smirking like it had all been some elaborate game, but he never did. And as the island faded into the horizon, she felt something inside her fade with it. She had thought this trip would be an escape. Instead, it became a prison, because now, she would never truly be free of him. Mia returned home a different person. The small apartment she had once fought to afford felt suffocating now, the walls closing in, the city noises outside a stark contrast to the gentle lull of the ocean she had left behind. She threw herself into work, into distractions, into pretending that nothing had happened. But then, the sickness started. At first she ignored it. Just exhaustion, just stress, just the aftermath of too many sleepless nights, until the nausea came in relentless waves, leaving her hunched over the toilet, breathless and shaking, until she realized she couldn't remember the last time she had gotten her period, until she stared at the third positive test, her hands trembling violently. No, this couldn't be happening. She had spent months trying to forget him, trying to erase his touch, his voice, his betrayal, trying to convince herself that he had been a mistake, a momentary lapse in judgment. And now, she would never be free of him. Her breath came in shallow, uneven gasps as she sank to the bathroom floor, the pregnancy test clattering onto the tiles. Her mind screamed 1,000 questions, but only one echoed loud enough to drown out everything else. Had anything been real at all? She had given her heart to a ghost, and now, she was left with nothing, except a piece of him growing inside her. Days passed, then weeks. She tried to wrap her mind around it, failed. Tried to tell herself she could do this, failed. Tried to push through the exhaustion, the fear, the complete devastation of knowing that the man she had fallen for, the man who had made her feel like the center of his world, had never intended to stay. It had been a game to him, a beautiful fleeting romance on a beautiful fleeting island, and she had been just another moment in his story. Her hands trembled as they pressed against her stomach. She wanted to cry, wanted to scream, wanted to go back in time and erase him completely, but it was too late. And then, the second blow came. The ultrasound technician smiled as she adjusted the probe, turning the screen toward Mia. "Everything looks healthy," the woman said kindly. "And congratulations, Miss Carter." Mia held her breath. "You're not just expecting one baby." Her heart stopped. "Not two." The walls of the room blurred around her. "You're carrying triplets." Mia couldn't breathe. "Three. Not one. Not two. Three." The air rushed from her lungs as the reality of it crashed over her like a tidal wave. She had barely been able to process one baby. How was she supposed to do this alone with three? She could barely afford rent. She could barely take care of herself. How was she supposed to raise 3 children? Alone. Her hands curled around the edges of the exam table, her vision blurring as panic settled deep in her bones. But even as fear threatened to consume her, it wasn't the financial struggles that haunted her most. It wasn't even the uncertainty of motherhood. It was the bigger, impossible question that kept her awake at night. How could she ever find their father when she didn't even know his real name? With each passing day, the puzzle refused to fit together. There was no trace of the man she had met, no forgotten jacket, no number scribbled on a napkin, no social media profiles, no records, nothing. The world had erased him, and the more she searched, the more the walls of her reality seemed to close in. Had she imagined it all? No, she refused to believe that. She had spent nights memorizing his touch, his voice, the way he made her feel like she was the only thing that mattered. He was real. And yet when she whispered his name into the quiet of her empty apartment, it felt like she was speaking to a ghost. Until one afternoon, a casual conversation cracked the case wide open. Mia stirred her coffee absent-mindedly, barely hearing Lena talk about her husband's return from his work trip. She had been half listening, half lost in thought, her mind stuck in its endless loop of unanswered questions, until, "My husband's back from his cruise shift," Lena said, flipping through her phone. "He was talking about some high-roller guy who threw this huge over-the-top party a few months back." Mia blinked, her fingers freezing around the mug. "What cruise?" she asked sharply, her voice coming out too fast. Lena tilted her head. "Some luxury ship, a Carter's Mirage, I think." Mia's entire body stiffened. Carter's Mirage. The name echoed in her head, sending a cold rush through her veins. She almost dropped her mug. "Mia." Lena frowned. "You okay?" Mia forced herself to breathe, forced herself to think. Elian had never given her a last name, never told her much about himself at all. And now, the only name that linked to him was her own. a cruel irony, or a deliberate choice. That night she met Lena's husband. She had barely let him sit down before she blurted out the question, "Do you know a man named Elian?" Lena's husband Mark raised a brow. Elian. He rubbed the back of his neck. "You mean Elian Cross?" Mia's breath hitched. Her stomach turned. "Cross?" she echoed. The name felt unfamiliar, and yet so devastatingly personal. Mark nodded. "Yeah, he owns the island. The whole damn thing, actually." The room tilted. Mia gripped the edge of the table. "He owns the island." "Yeah. Carter's Mirage is his cruise line. The island's a private retreat, invite only, the kind of place billionaires go when they don't want the rest of the world knowing where they are." Mia's heartbeat pounded in her ears. He had never told her, not once. Not in all those nights they had spent together, tangled in each other, whispering secrets that now felt like lies. Mark kept talking, unaware that he was shattering her entire world. "I mean, don't get me wrong. The guy's got money, but he's got a rep too. Every few months he brings some new woman to that island, and then poof, gone. They leave. He moves on. Same story, different girl." Mia felt physically sick. "What do you mean gone?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Mark hesitated, exchanging a glance with Lena. "They think they're special," he said, lowering his voice slightly. "And then one day, he's just done with them. No explanation, no contact. It's like they never existed." Her vision blurred. This wasn't just about her. He had done this before. He had made other women feel like the center of his world, only to disappear the moment they started believing in him. And now he had left her carrying his children. Mia pressed a hand to her stomach. Her body, her entire life, was no longer just hers. And yet the man responsible had been treating women like temporary amusements, as if they were nothing but passing storms in his perfectly controlled sky. Rage burned through her veins. She wasn't going to be one of them. She wasn't going to be just another ghost in his memory. Elian Cross had taken everything from her. Now, she was going to take something back. Mia felt the heat of rage coil inside her, a fire that had been smoldering since the moment she realized the truth. Elian Cross hadn't just taken her heart. He had stolen her future. He had left her with a lifetime of responsibility, while he disappeared into the shadows without a second thought. She had given him everything, and in return, he had left her with nothing but his name on the wind, and 3 innocent lives growing inside her. She couldn't let this slide. She wouldn't. There was only one way to face him. She had to go back. It took everything she had to afford the ticket. Every cent she had saved. Every freelance gig she could scrounge together. Every bit of pride she had left. She didn't care if she had to sit in economy, sleep on the deck, or survive off bread and water. All that mattered was getting back to that island, back to him. Her stomach twisted as she booked the passage, the familiar name Carter's Mirage glowing on her screen. The same ship, the same route, the same beginning. But this time, she wasn't a naive woman looking for adventure. She was a storm, and Elian Cross had no idea what was coming for him. The moment Mia stepped onto the ship, the past crashed into her like a tidal wave. The scent of the ocean, the distant sound of laughter and clinking glasses, the feel of the wooden deck beneath her feet. This was where it all started, where she had first met him, where she had danced with him, laughed with him, fallen for him, where she had been played. She inhaled sharply, forcing herself to stay steady. This wasn't about him. She wasn't here for a love story. She was here for her children, for justice, for every woman he had ever used and discarded like a forgotten whisper in the night. And yet, as she moved through the lavish halls of the ship, a cold, unsettling feeling twisted in her stomach, like she was being watched, like someone already knew she was here. She clenched her fists. No, that man had disappeared the moment she needed him most. He wasn't waiting for her. He wasn't thinking about her. He had already forgotten her, hadn't he? Mia pushed the thought away, forcing her legs to keep moving. But then came the hardest part, finding him. She searched the ship, but he was nowhere to be seen. Every glance toward the VIP section was met with guards in crisp suits, scanning the crowd for threats. Every time she asked a staff member about Elian Cross, she was met with hesitation. They knew something. They all knew something, but they weren't talking. Mia gritted her teeth. If Elian Cross thought he could hide from her, he was dead wrong, because she had nowhere else to go. No backup plan, no safety net. This was it. She would track him down. She would make him face what he had done. And despite everything, despite the lies, the betrayal, the months of silence, her heart still recognized him, still remembered. And that was the part that terrified her the most. Would she take him down, or would he shatter her all over again? Mia had no room in the ship's luxurious suites. She had spent all her savings, just to get a basic ticket on this floating palace. But that didn't matter. She wasn't here to be comfortable. She was here to hunt a ghost. For days, she watched, listened, asked careful questions without revealing too much. She stayed in the lower decks, where the crew whispered among themselves, where secrets thrived. And that was where she first heard it. His name spoken in hushed voices, but not just his name. Stories. The man behind the island, Elian Cross, a bartender muttered to another staff member one night, cleaning a glass behind the dimly lit bar. Mia's ears perked up, her fingers curled around the rim of her drink, as she kept her eyes trained ahead, pretending not to listen. The guy owns the whole damn island, the bartender continued. Controls everything. Wealthy as hell. Got connections everywhere. Mia's stomach twisted. So he wasn't just hiding, he was ruling. Another crew member scoffed. He's got it all, man. Women practically fall at his feet. You should see it. It's like he doesn't even try. They come to his island, he shows them a dream, and the next thing you know, they're hooked. Mia's jaw clenched, hooked like she had been. He's got away with them, the first guy added, shaking his head. They worship him. But you know what's crazy? What? They all think they're special. The bartender smirked. Every single one of them. He makes them believe it. The word sent a chill down Mia's spine. He makes them believe it, just like he made her believe it. Another crew member leaned in, lowering his voice. But what happens when he's done with them? A pause, then a quiet chuckle. They leave. He moves on. Same cycle, different woman. Mia swallowed hard. The laughter, the whispered words, the easy way they spoke about Elian Cross and his women. It was like he was a myth, a legend among men. But he was real. She had felt him. She had loved him. And he had vanished like a shadow. Mia barely heard the rest of their conversation. Her mind was spinning, heart pounding against her ribs. This wasn't just any man. This wasn't just a love story gone wrong. He was playing a game that she had been caught in. And now she was just another story, another woman he had charmed, another name he had forgotten. Her fingers trembled as she set down her drink. No, she wouldn't be one of them. She refused to be a name in his list of conquests. Another whisper among the crew, another woman who got too close to Elian Cross, only to be discarded. She would be the one to end this game, to end him. 3 days passed, 3 days of waiting, 3 days of burning rage. Then finally, they reached the island. Mia stepped onto the golden sands, her body humming with determination. And then she saw him, standing at the entrance of the grand estate, dressed in a crisp white shirt and dark trousers, a vision of control and power, welcoming the new guests. He looked exactly the same. No, worse, he looked better. The sun kissed his skin, the sea breeze ruffled his dark hair, and his charming, practiced smile was on full display, a smile she once believed in. But all she could see now was the lie beneath it. Mia felt the fury in her veins ignite. It was him, Elijah, or rather, Elian Cross, the man who ruined her, the man who left her with nothing, the man who had no idea that she had come back for him, for justice, for revenge. He had built a world where he was untouchable, where women were his playground, where he was always in control. But now he was hers, and Mia Carter was about to destroy him. Mia didn't expect him to notice her immediately, but he did. The moment her feet touched the sand, she could feel it, the shift in the air. The easy smile on Elian Cross's face faltered for half a second. To anyone else, it was imperceptible, but Mia saw it. Recognition, shock, fear, and then just as quickly, he masked it. But it was there, and it was the most satisfying thing she had felt in years. For the first time, Elian Cross looked afraid. Mia lifted her chin, suppressing the smirk threatening to betray her. Not yet. She had worked too hard for this moment. She wasn't here to give herself away too soon. So she did what she had spent the last few weeks perfecting. She played the game. She acted like just another guest, just another wide-eyed traveler, excited to experience his island, not a woman who had come back to ruin him. Mia waited. She explored the island as any normal guest would. She took in the luxurious villas, the infinity pools, the hidden jungle paths, and all the while, she could feel him watching, waiting. Then, on the second night, the invitation came. A handwritten note slipped under her villa door. No name, no signature, just 2 words, midnight, come, and a location, the private terrace overlooking the ocean. Mia stared at the note, her heart hammering in her chest. She had expected him to come to her eventually, but this was a trap, a test. He wanted to see if she would come back to him, if she would fall into his arms again. But what he didn't know was that Mia was ready to play. She was done being a pawn. This time she was the one pulling the strings. The night was warm, electric. Mia walked onto the private terrace as if she belonged there. And there he was, Aleion Cross, leaning against the railing, a glass of whiskey in his hand, the golden light of the lanterns flickering against his sharp, wickedly handsome face. He turned when he heard her, his piercing green eyes locking onto hers, and for a moment, just a moment, neither of them spoke. A storm brewed between them, unspoken but undeniable. Then he smirked, like nothing had ever happened, like he hadn't vanished from her life, like he hadn't broken her. "You came," he said smoothly, his voice laced with amusement. Mia tilted her head, giving him a slow, knowing smile. "Did you ever doubt I would?" His smirk deepened. "I'd be lying if I said I didn't miss you. Liar." Mia forced a soft, broken laugh, the kind of laugh a girl gives when she's given up on fighting for something that was never hers. "God," she murmured, shaking her head. "You really had me fooled." He flinched at that, but she didn't give him time to recover. She let out a breath, forced her lips into a smile, and did the unthinkable. She reached out and touched his hand. She saw the way his body tensed, the way his gaze dropped to their fingers like she had burned him. Good. He needed to feel the same fire she had felt when he disappeared. "Tell me," she whispered, tilting her head, keeping her voice soft. "If I hadn't found you, would you have ever told me?" Aleion hesitated, and that hesitation alone was another knife in her chest. Finally, he let out a slow exhale, his voice barely above a whisper. "No." And there it was, the truth behind the lie, the proof that he never planned to come back for her. Mia forced another smile, even as her entire world collapsed around her. She had his children growing inside her, and here he was, telling her he had planned to keep her in the dark forever. But two could play this game. Mia's heart hardened like stone. If this was how he wanted to play, then fine, she would play along. "You know what, Elijah?" she said, stepping closer. "It doesn't matter." His brows furrowed. "What?" She swallowed down every ounce of pain, every piece of betrayal, and forced herself to look up at him with something softer. "I don't care what happened," she whispered, letting her fingers brush against his wrist. "Not anymore." Elijah's jaw clenched. "Mia, no," she interrupted, placing a finger against his lips. "Let's not talk about the past." She saw the flash of hesitation in his eyes. He knew her. He had felt her fire before, and yet, he wanted to believe her. "Let's just enjoy tonight," she said, tilting her head. "Like old times." And just like that, Aleion Cross fell into her trap. For the next few days, Mia played along with his twisted game. She let him think he had won her over again, let him believe she was just another woman who couldn't resist him. But inside she was watching, calculating, learning everything about how his empire worked. She started conversations with the staff, the managers, the suppliers. She uncovered the secrets behind his wealth, the deals he had made, the illegal transactions he thought no one knew about. And slowly, she gathered enough evidence to burn his entire world to the ground. She wanted to see how far this man could go, how many lies he could stack before they came crumbling down around him. She let him take her hand, let him whisper things in her ear, let him pull her back into the gravity of his world. But what Elijah didn't know, what he could never suspect, was that Mia was carrying his children, and that knowledge gave her all the power. Because for the first time in this dangerous game, Mia held the winning hand. She just had to decide when to play it, and when to destroy him, all while kissing him goodnight. The night before her plan would be set in motion, Aleion took her to the highest point of the island, a secluded hilltop where the view stretched endlessly across the ocean. He stood behind her, his hands resting lightly on her waist, and for a brief moment, she let herself feel it. The warmth of him, the illusion of what could have been. Then his voice broke through the silence. "I don't want you to leave," he murmured. Mia smiled to herself. "Oh, you'll want me to leave after tomorrow." She turned in his arms, gazing up at him, playing her part one last time. "Then give me a reason to stay," she whispered. He exhaled, looking at her as if he actually meant it. And for a second, she almost believes him. But then she remembered everything he had done, every lie, every deception. And she knew this man didn't deserve her love. He deserved to fall. Aleion's ultimate betrayal. But while Mia played her game, so did he. Aleion wasn't just charming his way back into her heart, he was planning to get rid of her. Because as much as she pretended to trust him, Aleion believed his own lies. He thought she still loved him, thought she was so obsessed with him, that she would never leave, and that made her a problem. So he planned something sinister, a way to make sure Mia would be humiliated, thrown off the ship, and erased from his life forever. A trap, one that would ruin her in front of everyone. The setup, a crime she didn't commit. Aline Cross was a master of deception. He knew how to twist a story, how to manipulate a situation, until he was the victim, and someone else took the fall. Mia had expected him to fight back. She had expected a counterattack, but even she wasn't prepared for how low he was willing to go. On the night of the grand celebration of gala, when all the guests were gathered, when the island was alive with music and champagne and power, a VIP-only event, the kind of place where people with power watched each other like hawks. The music was soft, the glasses filled with golden champagne, the air thick with wealth and power. Mia was dressed in a sleek, stunning black gown, blending in with the elite of the elite, watching, waiting. She knew what this was, a test to see how much deeper he could lure her before cutting her throat. And then, right before midnight, it happened. The moment she had been waiting for. Security stormed into the ballroom. A hush fell over the room, and then one of the guards pointed straight at her. "Miss, we need you to step forward, now." Gasps filled the air, whispers, murmurs. Mia didn't move. She knew this was coming. Aline stepped beside her, his expression the perfect mask of shock and concern. "What's going on?" he asked smoothly, playing his role to perfection. One of the security officers held up a diamond necklace. "This was stolen from one of our VIP guests' suites," the officer announced, "and we have reason to believe this woman took it." Mia's blood ran cold, not because she was afraid, but because Aline had really gone this far. He had planted the necklace on her. He wanted her to look like a criminal in front of everyone, like she was desperate, bitter, just another woman who couldn't handle rejection. He wanted her to be nothing. But Aline had made one fatal mistake. He stood there beside her, his expression the perfect blend of disappointment and betrayal, and in that moment, Mia saw him for who he really was, a man who could smile at you while stabbing you in the heart. But he had underestimated her. She knew Aline was up to something. She saw the way his easy charm tightened whenever she entered a room, the way he was too careful, too calculated. He was planning something, but so was she. She had spent days gathering information, watching his movements, speaking to the right people, and then she discovered the final piece of the puzzle, the one thing that could ruin him. Sophia, the woman Aline was truly in love with, the one he was planning to marry. Mia had expected a casual fling, another name in his endless list of women, but no, this was different. Sophia wasn't just another woman, she was the one he actually wanted. And suddenly Mia had everything she needed, because what better way to destroy him than to make him lose the only thing he actually cared about? The room waited, everyone watched, hungry for scandal, ready to turn on her. Mia inhaled slowly, then she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a frightened smile, but the kind of smile that makes men like Aline Carter sweat. "Elijah," she said, her voice sweet as honey. "Are you really doing this?" A flicker of something passed through his eyes. Surprise. He hadn't expected this. "What do you mean?" he asked smoothly. She turned to the security guard, her chin tilted high. "Check the security footage," she said. "I'm sure it will show exactly who placed that necklace in my suite." The guard hesitated. Elijah's mask cracked. "This is ridiculous," he scoffed, stepping closer. "Mia, don't make this worse for yourself. I have something else to say." Mia interrupted, her voice deadly calm. The room held its breath. She turned to face everyone, and then in front of the wealthiest, most powerful guests on the island, she dropped the bomb. "Aline Cross, or rather Elijah Carter, isn't just a liar," she said. "He's a cheater." Murmurs, more whispers. "You see," Mia continued, never breaking eye contact with Sophia, "Aline has a habit of making women feel special, making them believe they're the only one, that they're different." Sophia's fingers tightened around the champagne glass in her hand, and then one day, she whispered, "He vanishes, and you're left wondering if he was ever real at all." Sophia's lips parted, confusion flickering across her face. Elijah stiffened. Mia stepped forward, and the world went silent. Aline's face drained of color. "Mia," he said sharply, his voice barely a breath. Mia smiled, slow, dangerous. "Sorry, Aline," she purred, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I just thought Sophia should know the truth about the man she's marrying." Gasps. "Mia." Aline's voice was quieter now, strained. She turned to him, and for the first time, he looked desperate, like he knew this was the end. Please, he said softly, don't do this. But she already had. She had spent months imagining this moment. The whispers started immediately. Elian tensed, his hands curling into fists. Mia, don't, he warned. But it was too late. She turned to Sophia, a beautiful woman, untouched by the cruelty of the man beside her. Did he tell you about me? Mia asked sweetly. About how he left me with nothing. About how I spent months searching for him, thinking I meant something, only to find out I was just another name in his collection. Sophia's brows furrowed, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Mia stepped closer. But that's not even the best part, she said softly. Because he didn't just abandon me, Sophia. She held Elian's gaze, daring him to stop her. Then she whispered the final bomb. He left me pregnant. The world exploded. Gasps, whispers, shocked stares. The entire island turned against him in seconds. Elian staggered back. For the first time he looked completely, utterly defeated. And Mia drank in the moment. This was what justice tasted like. Elijah, she continued. Should I tell everyone about the night you vanished? About how you left me with nothing but a fake name? Empty promises. Silence. Complete, utter silence. Then chaos. Gasps. Shouts. The guests turned, eyes darting between Mia and Elijah. What? Someone whispered. He got her pregnant. Elijah's face had drained of all color. He opened his mouth, but for the first time, he had no words. Mia wasn't done. Oh, don't worry, she said, her voice mocking now. I was going to tell you eventually, but this, she gestured to the guards, framing me, trying to get rid of me like trash. That's a new low, even for you. More whispers. The woman he was planning to marry took a step back. Elian, she demanded, her voice shaking. Is this true? His jaw tightened. I have proof. Mia's voice sliced through the air like a blade. She pulled out her phone and held up screenshots, pictures, messages, and then the final move. She hit play on a recording. And Elian's own voice filled the night. She still loves me. She'll never leave. I just need her gone, and this is the best way to do it. More gasps, more murmurs. The woman Elian was going to marry. She slapped him, and just like that, everything he had built came crumbling down. Mia turned away, because this time, she was the one leaving him behind, and she wasn't looking back. Elian Cross had built his empire on power, deception, and control. Tonight in the heart of his own kingdom, Mia ripped it all away from him. The guests whispered. His secrets were out. His perfect mask shattered. The woman he had planned to marry had already stormed away, her heels clicking against the marble floors, her voice echoing with rage and disgust. But Elijah didn't chase after her. No, he stood in the middle of the room, his jaw clenched, his world burning down around him, and the only thing left standing was Mia. Mia, the woman he had tried to erase, the woman he had betrayed, the woman who was carrying his children. And in that moment, he wasn't Elian Cross, the powerful man who owned this ship and private island. He was just a man, a broken man, who had lost everything, and he fell to his knees. Mia, his voice was raw, stripped of its usual confidence, desperate. He grabbed her hand, gripping it as if she was the only thing keeping him afloat. Please, he whispered, don't do this. Mia didn't move, didn't flinch. She just stared down at him, the great Elijah Carter on his knees. But she didn't feel victorious. She felt empty. She had wanted this. She had spent months dreaming of this moment. But now that it was here, it didn't erase the pain. And for the first time since stepping onto this ship, she broke. Tears welled up in her eyes, burning, blinding. And when she spoke, her voice wasn't filled with revenge. It was filled with every ounce of heartbreak she had carried since the night he disappeared. You left me, she whispered. Elian sucked in a breath. Mia, you left me, she repeated, her voice shaking now. Do you have any idea what that night did to me? He swallowed hard, but said nothing. She pulled her hand from his grasp, stepping back, her tears falling freely now. I waited for you, she choked out. I searched for you. I convinced myself it had to be a mistake, that something must have happened, because you wouldn't just vanish like that. Elian's hands trembled. Mia, she shook her head. But you did, she whispered. You vanished, like I never even existed. She saw it then, the pain in his eyes, the regret, the shame. But it didn't matter, because regret didn't erase what he had done. She inhaled sharply, wiping at her tears, then gave him the final blow. I was alone, Elian Cross, she whispered. And then I found out I was pregnant. His entire body locked in place. Mia let out a breathless laugh, a hollow, broken sound. Not just with one, she whispered. Not two. She met his gaze. Three. Elijah's world stopped. Everything around them disappeared. The whispers, the stares, the weight of his ruined reputation. There was only her, and the words that had just destroyed him. Mia laughed bitterly. Do you know what that felt like? To sit in a tiny apartment, alone, terrified, knowing that you left me with this. Elian couldn't breathe. She took another step back. Every day I looked for you, she continued, her voice breaking. And every day I had to accept that you were never coming back. She clenched her fists. And now I get to carry your children, raise them and remember you for the rest of my life. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Because every time I look at them, she whispered, I will see you. Elijah's chest ached. He had been stabbed before. He had fought battles no one knew about. But nothing had ever hurt like this. He reached for her again, but she pulled away. Mia, he said, his voice barely a breath. I never meant to. She cut him off. I don't care what you meant. The words struck him harder than any punch ever could. She straightened her shoulders. I survived without you, she said, and I'll keep surviving without you. She exhaled, the final decision settling in her bones. We're done, Elijah. And then she turned away. She walked out of the ballroom, out of his life, and for the first time in his life, Elijah Carter had nothing. Mia left the ship that night. She didn't look back. The world had heard her truth. Elijah had fallen, and now she was free. Mia left the ship that night. She didn't look back. The world had heard her truth. Elijah had fallen, and now she was free. But freedom didn't mean forgetting. Because if life had taught her one thing, it was this. It's always harder to forget than to forgive. She had spent months hating him, wishing for revenge, dreaming of the moment he would suffer the way she had. But when it finally happened, when she watched Elijah Carter on his knees, begging her to stay, it didn't bring her peace. Because the truth was cruel. Whom you once loved never truly leaves your heart. Not entirely. But this time Mia gathered courage. She wouldn't let love make her weak again. She had her own life to live, 3 lives to protect, and she refused to let Elijah's betrayal define her future. Mia worked. She pushed past the heartbreak, the memories, the pain. She built a life from the ground up, carving out a future where she and her children didn't need a man like Elijah Carter. She took late-night shifts, fought through exhaustion, saved every penny, and soon she was standing in the doorway of her own home. A place filled with light, laughter, warmth, a place where her children would never feel abandoned, where they would grow up knowing love, safety, and strength. Not lies, not betrayal, just happiness, her happiness. Years later, when people spoke of Mia Carter, they didn't whisper her name with pity. They spoke of a woman who survived, who fought, who walked away from the man who tried to destroy her, and built a life better than he ever could have given her. A woman who, despite carrying the shadows of the past, chose joy. She never hated Elijah, because hate kept you chained to the past. She didn't need that. She had her future, and for the first time in her life, it was hers alone. No lies, no heartbreak, no Elijah Carter, just her, and the life she fought for. The happiest life, and that was the greatest revenge of all.